By the time they had finished the first sweep of the lunar surface, all Mikhail could think about was getting home. Back to his wife, his children, the dacha by the lake where the birch trees swayed in the wind like dancers. But as he floated weightlessly in the cramped confines of the Soyuz, the glow of the Earth growing larger in the viewport, he knew something was wrong. "It's not right, Sergei," he said, his voice tight, the words clipped. "Check again." Sergei, strapped in next to him, turned from the navigation console. His face, normally placid, had a pinched look. "I checked. 3 times." He ran a hand over the grizzled stubble on his chin. "The trajectory is wrong. We're off course." Mikhail swallowed. His mouth felt dry, as if all the moisture had been sucked out by the vacuum beyond the thin hull. "How wrong?" Sergei hesitated. "We're not heading for Earth." "What?" The word escaped like a gasp. Mikhail's mind reeled. "But that's impossible. We did everything by the book. The burn, the angles, everything." Sergei nodded, his eyes on the console. The numbers there were cold, unforgiving. "I know, but look." He pointed at the screen, at the data streaming by like the heartbeat of a machine gone mad. Mikhail squinted, his mind racing to catch up. It was a mess of numbers and symbols, but the meaning was clear. He stopped, the air catching in his lungs. "We're going to miss Earth." "Yes." Sergei's voice was flat. "By a lot." The silence that followed was thick, pressing down on them like the weight of the vast, empty blackness outside. "How can this be?" Mikhail's voice cracked. "We triple-checked everything." Sergei shook his head. "I don't know. Maybe a miscalculation. Maybe something we missed." He didn't sound convinced, and Mikhail didn't blame him. "No one misses something like this," Mikhail said. "Not us. Not the best team in the whole Soviet space program." Sergei let out a humorless chuckle. "Well, we did." The words hung between them like a specter. The implications were staggering, almost too much to comprehend. Mikhail closed his eyes, took a deep breath, tried to focus. "So what happens now?" Sergei glanced at the viewport, at the blue-green sphere of Earth slowly shifting away. "We drift," he said, "and we keep drifting. Past Earth, past the moon, out into deep space." "No." Mikhail shook his head violently, as if he could shake away the truth. "We can't. We have to get back. We have to—" "There's nothing we can do," Sergei said quietly. "The fuel reserves are spent. Even if we had enough, the angles are all wrong. We'd have to adjust our trajectory by— Hell, I don't know. But it's not possible. Not with what we have." Mikhail felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. His heart pounded in his chest, each beat echoing in his ears like a drum. "We're just going to keep going? Until—" "Yes," Sergei said simply. Mikhail swallowed hard, his throat tight. "And the others? Ground control?" Sergei's lips twisted in a grim smile. "They'll say it was an accident. Maybe a technical failure. They'll hold a ceremony, raise a statue, maybe even name a street after us. But they won't tell anyone what really happened." "Why not?" "Because they can't." Sergei's eyes were dark, haunted. It would be admitting failure. Admitting that they sent 2 of their best into space and couldn't bring them back. They'll never do that. Not after everything we've sacrificed. The words hit Mikhail like a punch to the gut. He thought of his family, of his wife's smiling face, of his children's laughter echoing through their tiny apartment in Moscow. He thought of the pride in his father's eyes when he'd been selected for the mission, the first Soviet landing on the moon. He'd been a hero then, a symbol of hope, of strength. And now, "What do we do?" Mikhail asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. Sergei sighed, leaned back against the seat. "We talk, we remember, we say goodbye." "Goodbye?" The word tasted bitter on Mikhail's tongue. "That's it?" "That's all we can do." Mikhail clenched his fists, his nails digging into his palms. I can't. I can't just give up. I know. Sergei reached out, put a hand on his shoulder. It was a small gesture, but it was enough. But we don't have a choice. They sat there in silence for a long time, the hum of the life support systems the only sound in the tiny capsule. Do you remember the day we left? Sergei asked finally, his voice soft. Mikhail nodded, his eyes distant. The crowds, the flags, all those people waving, cheering. Yes, Sergei smiled faintly. I thought my heart would burst. I'd never felt so proud. Me too. Mikhail swallowed past the lump in his throat. And now? Sergei shrugged. Now we're just 2 more stars in the sky. Mikhail laughed, a hollow, broken sound. I didn't think it would end like this. Neither did I. Sergei's eyes grew distant. But maybe it's fitting. We came to touch the stars. Maybe it's right that we stay with them. But no one will know, Mikhail whispered, the words like a knife twisting in his gut. No one will remember. They will, Sergei said softly. Not by name, not by face, but they'll remember. Every time they look up at the sky, at the stars, they'll remember that we were there. Mikhail closed his eyes, let the silence wash over him. He thought of his wife, his children, his parents. He thought of the life he'd lived, of the things he'd done, of the things he'd never have the chance to do, and he felt a strange, unexpected peace. You're right, he said quietly. They will remember. Sergei nodded. For as long as there are stars in the sky. They sat there, side by side, as the earth grew smaller and smaller in the viewport, until it was just a pale blue dot against the vast blackness of space. We did something great, didn't we? Mikhail asked, his voice barely more than a whisper. Yes, Sergei said, his eyes bright with unshed tears. We did. Mikhail reached out, took his hand, held it tightly. For Mother Russia. For Mother Russia, Sergei echoed, his voice thick with emotion. And then they were silent, the words hanging between them like a prayer, like a promise, as they drifted onward, past the earth, past the moon, out into the infinite void, 2 more stars in a sky full of memories.